Hi, good morning everyone, and welcome to our weekly edition of Thursday Takeaway. Thank you for joining, and today we continue in the series of encounters with Jesus, individuals from the New Testament. Aren't you glad that God didn't make us all alike? And today we're looking at two sisters in the New Testament who are very different. They'd be familiar to you, Mary and Martha. Sometimes they've been referred to as sweet and sour. Two very different personalities with different priorities. Martha is often described as a worker, whilst Mary is often defined as a worshipper. Martha was given to hospitality. She was domesticated, organized, practical, and if you asked her to choose between a broom and a book, she'd probably take the broom. Mary, on the other hand, was quite meditative and quite contemplative. And of course, the day that Jesus comes to their house, that they welcome Jesus into their home, they both are involved in very different roles. Martha receives Jesus into the family home in Bethany. Jesus was a close friend of the family, and the Bible says that she welcomed Jesus into her home. She takes the initiative. She displays loving hospitality. She's warm-hearted. She's generous, and because she had a deep affection for Jesus. But in the Gospel of Luke, in chapter 10, where Luke gives us the account of this incident, it tells us that she quickly became upset and uptight with her sister. Martha finds herself having extended the invitation. Martha finds herself in the kitchen and organising things, and as it is, sometimes you're looking round to see who's going to help and who else could be involved. And what she saw made her agitated. She saw Mary sat at the feet of Jesus. The dishes were piling up. There's work to be done. She again looks over her shoulder, thinking to herself, well, I wouldn't mind sitting down myself. If only. Chance would be a fine thing. If it wasn't for me, this house would be falling apart. Somebody has to work, otherwise nothing will get done. Martha seems to be resentful and agitated. I've met a few Marthas in the church in my time, very diligent, practical, hospitable people, and but sometimes they tend to spill over when they see other people not pulling their weight. Perhaps they see other people who could help and they choose not to. And I can quite understand people's frustration there. And Martha was clearly out of sorts. She's out of sorts with her sister, who she felt should be alongside her in the kitchen. But she's also out of sorts with Jesus. He's the honoured guest, and she vents her feelings of frustration on him. Basically, she says, don't you care, Jesus, that my sister has left me all alone to do the work? Tell her, Jesus, use your influence. Tell her to come and help me. And she suddenly explodes. I'm sure poor old Mary would have been very embarrassed. Mary had seized the opportunity to sit at the feet of Jesus, which of course was a huge privilege, because in the culture of that day, no Jewish woman would be allowed to sit at the feet of a rabbi. They would be barred from sitting at their feet or coming anywhere near them. But of course, Jesus dispenses with all that, and he invites Mary to come and sit at his feet. And Martha is agitated, and she accused Jesus of not caring, and she lashes out on Jesus. Very often in our Christian lives, the vertical and the horizontal are very much intertwined. And, if you happen to fall out with somebody and you get feelings of agitation and you feel hard done by, very often, you can take that out on God. And why don't you deal with it, God? God, why don't you intervene? You know I'm in the right here, God, and etc., etc. So she's out of sorts with her sister. She's out of sorts with Jesus, but she's out of sorts with herself. And Luke describes it with 3 words. He says she was distracted. That literally means she was drawn away. It started out okay. She welcomed Jesus. She was the wonderful guest, a host, and invited Jesus into her home. But very soon it began to change. The atmosphere began to change as she became distracted and began to look at what else needed to be done. You see, serving Jesus became a greater priority than being with Jesus. And it's an easy route to get caught into, that we are caught up with serving and not taking the time to worship him and be with him. She was torn and drawn in different directions. Her life was very cluttered. And the real problem here isn't Mary or isn't Jesus. The real problem, of course, is Martha. And Jesus speaks up and he calls her name twice, which of course is always significant. Because God is more interested in who we are than what we do for him. It's not about our performance for him. It's our relationship with him that matters. And Jesus says, in effect, Martha, I don't need all this food. I really haven't come for a 3-course dinner. I wasn't looking for this. Really, I want your company. I'd like you to spend time with me. And, you know, it's possible to be active in church and yet miss out on the really important things. It's possible to be active and miss out on adoration and miss out on intimacy. But we are active, we are there, we are busy, we are seen to be busy. But what's driving that? What's motivating that? You know, I heard a sermon many years ago, and it was entitled The Barrenness of a Busy Life. And how true that is. And I've seen that in church life. I've seen people who are diligent and practical and always willing to help. But where are they in their devotional life? Where are they when it comes to just pure worship and sitting at the feet of Jesus and bringing adoration to him? Martha vents her feelings of frustration. Lord, don't you care? Lord, why don't you do something about it? You see, Martha's priorities didn't match the priorities of Jesus. But Jesus is very gentle with her. He doesn't rebuke her. He simply says, one thing is needful. In actual fact, both of you are serving. He says, you are serving in the kitchen and Mary is sat at my feet. You see, there are times that we're so busy doing things for Jesus and we're not spending time with him. How do you react when you consider yourself to be busy, but nobody else seems to notice? Nobody else seems to acknowledge it, and you're busy and you know what you're doing and you're looking for other people perhaps to acknowledge it and recognize it or even help you, but they don't. How do you cope with that? How do we come through that experience? Are we irritated? Do we get upset? Do we become angry? Or do we just say, Lord, it's all unto you? And of course, the Bible says, he that sees in secret will reward openly. So please determine today to be Christ-centered rather than self-centered. Jesus said, Mary hath chosen that better part. It refers to fellowship. She had come close. She had allowed herself space. And Jesus invites her in. Jesus invites her to listen to him and come close to him. And you know, we all need to work for God, but before we work for God, we have to worship him. And let's get that in the right order, that firstly we are worshippers. Jesus told the woman of Samaria, my Father seeks those that will worship him. And when we are in a worshipful attitude, then the work that we produce will be really good. And let's keep that balance right, that we worship Jesus first and then we work for him. Have a great day.